Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Victory and watched the alien space station grow larger on the main screen. Kepler-7 was a massive structure that looked like a spinning wheel made of metal and crystal. It floated in the empty space between two star systems, serving as neutral ground for meetings between different species. Jack had never seen anything like it before. No human had. The Admiral was a tall man with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. He had served in the Earth Navy for 30 years, fighting pirates and rebels in the outer colonies. But this was different. This was first contact with a real alien empire. The Draconian Empire had sent a message to Earth 6 months ago. They wanted to meet. They wanted to talk. Jack hoped they wanted peace. Captain Lisa Chen walked up beside him. She was younger than Jack, maybe 40 years old, with black hair, tied back in a tight bun. She carried a tablet computer with all the information they planned to show the aliens. Pictures of Earth's military, videos of their weapons, data about their ships and soldiers. Lisa had spent weeks preparing this presentation. "Are you ready for this, Admiral?" Lisa asked. Jack nodded. "As ready as we can be. Remember, we want to show them we're strong but not aggressive. We don't want to fight, but we won't back down from one either." The Victory moved slowly toward the docking bay. Through the windows, Jack could see other ships already docked at the station. Some were sleek and silver, others were angular and dark. One looked like it was made of living coral. All of them were alien. All of them belonged to species that humans had never met before. The docking process took 20 minutes. When it was finished, Jack and Lisa led a small team through the airlock and into the station. The artificial gravity felt normal. The air smelled clean, but had a strange metallic taste. The walls were covered in symbols that meant nothing to humans. A robot guide met them at the entrance. It was tall and thin, with 6 arms and a head that looked like a crystal. It spoke in perfect English. "Welcome to Kepler-7. The Draconian delegation is waiting for you in Conference Room Alpha. Please follow me." They walked through corridors filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. Jack saw creatures that walked on 4 legs, others that floated in the air, and some that seemed to be made of living metal. Most of them stopped to stare at the humans. Jack wondered what they thought of Earth's newest visitors. Conference Room Alpha was huge. The ceiling was 50 feet high and covered with stars that moved like a real sky. A massive table sat in the center of the room. It was made of black stone that seemed to absorb light. The Draconians were already waiting. Jack had seen pictures of them in the intelligence reports, but seeing them in person was different. They were enormous. The smallest one was at least 8 feet tall. The largest, who sat at the head of the table, was close to 10 feet. They had scales like reptiles, but these scales seemed to shift color in the light. Their eyes were yellow with narrow pupils. Their hands ended in claws that could probably tear through steel. The leader stood up when the humans entered. His scales were darker than the others, almost black with hints of deep red. He wore what looked like armor, but it was so advanced that it seemed more like a second skin. "I am War Commander Vexthor of the Draconian Empire," he said. His voice was deep and powerful, like thunder rolling across a mountain. "You are the humans from the small blue world." "I am Admiral Jack Morrison of the United Earth Space Command," Jack replied. "This is Captain Lisa Chen and our diplomatic team. We're honored to meet you." Vexthor made a sound that might have been laughter. "Honored? Yes. Sit, little humans. Let us discuss your place in the galaxy." Jack felt his jaw tighten at the word little, but he kept his expression calm. They sat at the table. The chairs were too big for humans, making them feel even smaller next to the massive aliens. "We understand you want to learn about Earth's capabilities," Lisa said, activating her tablet. A holographic display appeared above the table. "We'd like to share some information about our military forces." The display showed Earth's newest battleship, the UES Titan. It was 2 kilometers long and bristled with weapons. Railguns lined its hull like the spines of a metal creature. Missile tubes were visible at regular intervals. The ship looked dangerous and powerful. Vexthor looked at the image, and his yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. "What are those small tubes along the hull?" "Those are railguns," Lisa explained. They use magnetic fields to accelerate metal projectiles at very high speeds. Each one can fire a tungsten rod at 30 kilometers per second. The Draconians began making the same sound Vexthor had made earlier. It took Jack a moment to realize they were laughing. Not polite laughter, but the kind of laughter that came from hearing something ridiculous. "Metal rods," one of the Draconians said. "They throw metal rods." "Like primitive spears," said another. Vexthor raised a clawed hand for silence. "Show us more of these weapons, humans." Lisa activated the next part of the presentation. The display showed a nuclear missile launch. The weapon streaked through space and detonated against an asteroid, turning it into glowing dust. The laughter got louder. "Chemical explosives," Vexthor said, shaking his massive head. "Your species still uses chemical explosives." "These are thermonuclear weapons," Jack said, trying to keep the anger out of his voice. "Each one has the power of 50 million tons of conventional explosives." 50 million tons, Vexthor repeated. He touched a control on his armor. The holographic display changed, showing a Draconian ship. It was enormous, easily 10 times larger than Earth's biggest vessel. Blue energy crackled along its hull. "This is a standard Draconian cruiser," Vexthor said. "Those blue lights are plasma cannons. Each one can generate temperatures of 1 million degrees, hot enough to melt any material in seconds. The ship is protected by energy shields that can deflect any attack." He touched the control again. The display showed the ship firing. Beams of blue plasma shot out and struck what looked like a small moon. The moon simply vanished, turned to gas in an instant. "One shot," Vexthor said. "One shot from one cannon destroyed a moon, and you want to impress us with chemical explosives." Another Draconian leaned forward. "War Commander, perhaps we should show them graviton weapons." "No," Vexthor said. "I think they understand our position." He looked directly at Jack. "Your species still throws rocks, Admiral Morrison. We mastered energy, weapons before your son was born. We have evolved beyond such crude methods." Jack stood up slowly. "Those crude methods kept Earth free for thousands of years." "Against other rock throwers," Vexthor said. "Not against a real military force." He stood as well, towering over the human. "I will be direct with you, Admiral. The Draconian Empire claims this sector of space. Your system is now part of our territory." "Earth doesn't recognize that claim," Jack replied. "Recognition is not required," Vexthor said. "In 30 of your days, our fleet will arrive at your world. You will surrender unconditionally or be destroyed. We are being generous by giving you time to prepare." "Generous?" Lisa said. "You call invasion generous?" Vexthor looked down at her with what might have been pity. "Captain Chen, your entire species fights with weapons our ancestors abandoned millions of years ago. This is not an invasion. This is pest control." The war commander walked toward the door. The other Draconians followed him. Before leaving, he turned back to the humans. 30 days, he said. "We will arrive at coordinates that we are transmitting to your ship now. We are so confident of victory that we see no harm in telling you exactly where and when we will attack. Use the time to evacuate your civilians if you wish." The aliens left the room. Jack and Lisa sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Lisa spoke. "They really think we're helpless." Jack nodded. "Good. Let them think that." He stood and headed for the door. "We have 30 days to show them how wrong they are." The war room in the Pentagon was filled with worried voices and the soft glow of computer screens. General Kevin Brooks sat at the head of a long table, his weathered face showing every one of his 55 years. Around him, Earth's top military. Leaders argued about their chances against the Draconian Empire. "We're completely outgunned," said Admiral Susan Parker. She was reviewing the battle reports from previous alien conflicts that had been shared by other species. "They're smallest. Ships are bigger than our largest ones. Their weapons can melt planets." Defense Secretary Ryan Mitchell nodded grimly. "Intelligence estimates they have over 1,000 ships in their main fleet. We have maybe 200 combat vessels total." General Brooks raised his hand for silence. "We've been looking at this wrong. We're not trying to match their firepower. Ship for ship. We need to think like guerrilla fighters." Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her computer tablet. She was Earth's leading expert on alien technology, a thin woman with curly brown hair and thick glasses. She had been studying the recordings from the meeting at Kepler 7 for 3 days straight. "I think I found something," she said quietly. "Look at this." The main screen showed a replay of Vexthor demonstrating draconian weapons. Dr. Vasquez slowed the video and pointed at the energy shield around the alien ship. "See how the shield deflects the plasma beams from their test firing. It bends the energy away like a mirror. But watch what happens when debris from the destroyed moon hits the shield." Everyone leaned forward. In slow motion, they could see chunks of rock bouncing off the energy barrier. "The shield stops them," Admiral Parker said. "No," Dr. Vasquez replied. "Look closer. The biggest pieces bounce off, yes, but watch the smaller, faster pieces." She slowed the video even more. Tiny fragments of the destroyed moon were moving at incredible speeds, turned into projectiles by the explosion. Most bounced off the shield, but some of the smallest and fastest pieces passed right through. "The shield is designed to stop energy. Weapons and large objects," Dr. Vasquez explained. "But it has trouble with small, high-velocity projectiles, especially ones moving at significant fractions of light speed." Colonel Nathan Price had been quiet during the meeting. He was a tactical genius who had won 3 wars in the outer colonies using unconventional methods. Now he stood up and walked to the main screen. "They're not expecting kinetic weapons because they think kinetic weapons are primitive," he said. "But what if we made primitive weapons that aren't primitive at all?" "Explain," General Brooks said. Nathan pointed at the draconian ship on the screen. "Their shields work by detecting incoming energy and redirecting it. They probably have sensors that can spot plasma beams and laser bolts from light years away. But a chunk of tungsten doesn't give off any energy signature until it hits something." Dr. Vasquez began typing rapidly on her tablet. "Nathan's right. Look at these power readings from their shields. They're designed to handle massive energy loads, but the actual physical structure might be vulnerable to kinetic impact." Admiral Parker frowned. "But our railguns are already kinetic weapons." Vexthor saw them and laughed. "Because he saw small railguns firing individual projectiles," Nathan replied. "What if we scaled up? What if we used every railgun on every ship to fire at the same target simultaneously?" General Brooks was beginning to smile. "Saturate their defenses." "Exactly," Nathan said. "But we need more than ship-based weapons. We need something they won't see coming." Dr. Vasquez was already working on her computer. "What about kinetic bombardment satellites? We could position them throughout the solar system before the Draconians arrive. Simple tungsten rods with basic guidance systems." "Rods from God," Admiral Parker said, using the old nickname for orbital kinetic weapons. "But how do we get them, moving fast enough to penetrate alien shields?" "Electromagnetic launchers," Dr. Vasquez replied. "We build them big, really big. Each satellite could accelerate a tungsten rod to 15% of light speed." Nathan was pacing now, his mind working through the possibilities. "We make them think we're fighting a conventional battle, ships firing missiles and energy weapons just like they expect. Meanwhile, our kinetic impactors are already in motion, coming from directions they won't anticipate." General Brooks activated his communication system. "I want every shipyard in the system working on this. Retrofit every vessel with additional railguns. I want tungsten rods manufactured by the millions. And I want our best engineers designing those kinetic satellites." "What about our nuclear weapons?" Admiral Parker asked. "We use them too," Nathan said. "But not as explosives. We use them as kinetic kill vehicles. Accelerate nuclear warheads to maximum velocity and let physics do the work. The impact energy alone will be devastating." Dr. Vasquez was still studying the alien technology recordings. "There's something else. Their ships are huge, which means they can't maneuver quickly. Our fighters are much smaller and more agile. If we can get close enough, we could deliver kinetic weapons at point-blank range." "That's suicide," Admiral Parker said. "Not if we do it right," Nathan replied. "Small, fast ships carrying kinetic penetrators. Hit-and-run attacks while the main fleet keeps them distracted." Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson had been listening from the back of the room. She was one of Earth's best fighter pilots, a woman who had never lost a dogfight in 15 years of service. "Sir, request permission to speak," she said. "Go ahead, Amy," General Brooks replied. "My squadron has been training for close-quarters space combat. We can modify our fighters to carry kinetic kill vehicles. If Dr. Vasquez is right about their shield weaknesses, we might be able to punch through their defenses where larger ships can't. Nathan nodded approvingly. Fast attack craft with kinetic weapons. They'll never expect it. Chief Engineer Bill Thompson spoke up from his corner of the room. He was a large man with rough hands and a practical mind. I can have the shipyards working around the clock, but 30 days isn't much time to retrofit an entire fleet. Then we prioritize, General, Brooks said. Which ships can be upgraded fastest? Bill pulled out his tablet and began making calculations. The newer destroyers and cruisers already have modular weapon systems. We can swap out their missile tubes for additional railguns. The carriers will take longer, but we can modify their fighter bays to launch kinetic kill vehicles. Dr. Vasquez had moved to another computer terminal. I'm running simulations of tungsten rod impacts against energy shields. The results are promising. A rod moving at 15% light speed would hit with the force of a nuclear weapon, but without any energy signature for their sensors to detect. How many satellites can we build in 30 days? General Brooks asked. If we use every manufacturing facility in the system, Bill replied, maybe 500. Each one could carry 20 tungsten rods. Nathan was doing math in his head. 10,000 kinetic impactors, plus whatever our ships can fire. That should be enough to overwhelm their defenses. What about guidance systems? Admiral Parker asked. Keep them simple, Dr. Vasquez said. Basic targeting computers that lock onto the largest energy signatures. The draconian ships will be giving off massive amounts of power. Our weapons will find them automatically. General Brooks stood up. All right, people, we have our strategy. Amy, I want you training every fighter pilot in kinetic combat techniques. Bill, get those shipyards working. Elena, I need you to design the most efficient kinetic kill system possible. Nathan, you're in charge of overall battle planning. What about the Draconians? Admiral Parker asked. They're monitoring our communications. Won't they figure out what we're doing? Nathan smiled for the first time all day. Let them monitor our standard military channels. They'll see us preparing conventional defenses, building more missiles, upgrading our energy weapons, all the things they expect us to do. Meanwhile, the real preparations happen on closed channels, General Brooks added. Project Thunderbolt is now classified at the highest level. Only the people in this room and their direct subordinates will know the full plan. Dr. Vasquez was already heading for the door. I need to get to the research labs. 30 days to revolutionize human warfare. As the meeting broke up, Nathan approached General Brooks privately. Sir, there's something else we should consider, he said quietly. What is it? The Draconians are so confident they told us exactly where and when they'll attack. That level of arrogance suggests they've never faced serious resistance before. General, Brooks nodded. Good point. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that an enemy who's never been surprised is an enemy who doesn't know how to adapt quickly, Nathan said. If our first strike is successful, they might panic. Or they might get angry and try to destroy Earth completely, Nathan shrugged. Then we better make sure our first strike is our last strike. Hit them so hard they don't get a chance to recover. General Brooks looked out the window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Draconian fleet was already moving toward Earth. In 30 days, humanity would find out if courage and cleverness could overcome superior technology. Get to work, Colonel, he said. We've got a war to win. Captain Greg Hamilton stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour and watched the enemy fleet materialize out of hyperspace. Even though he had been preparing for this moment for 30 days, the sight still took his breath away. 200 massive, draconian warships dropped into normal space near Jupiter's orbit, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and bristling with plasma weapons. Each alien vessel was a masterpiece of advanced engineering. The smallest destroyers were 3 kilometers long, while the largest dreadnoughts stretched for nearly 15 kilometers. They moved in perfect formation, like a school of metal fish swimming through the darkness of space. Blue energy crackled along their hulls as their weapons charged to full power. "My God!" whispered Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell from the communications station. "They're enormous!" Greg nodded grimly. His own ship, the Endeavour, was 2 kilometers long and considered one of Earth's largest vessels. Next to the Draconian fleet, it looked like a minnow facing a pack of whales. But Greg knew something the aliens didn't. Size wasn't everything in space combat. Communications, Open a channel to Admiral Morrison, Greg ordered. The main screen flickered and showed Admiral Jack Morrison on the bridge of the UES Victory. The older man looked calm despite the overwhelming odds they faced. "Greg, are your people ready?" the Admiral asked. "As ready as we'll ever be, sir," Greg replied. "The kinetic bombardment satellites are in position throughout the system. Dr. Vasquez's calculations show they should reach optimal velocity in 40 minutes. Good. Remember, this first engagement is just a test. We need to make them think we're fighting conventionally while our real weapons get into position." The channel closed, and Greg turned to his tactical officer. "Commander Price, status on our conventional weapons." Nathan Price, who had been temporarily assigned to the Endeavor for this battle, checked his displays. "All missile tubes loaded. Railguns charged. Energy weapons at full power. We're ready to play our part." The Draconian fleet was spreading out as it approached Earth's outer defenses. War Commander Vexthor's flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Blood Fang, took position at the center of the formation. Its hull was dark red with black markings, and it bristled with more weapons than some human fleets possessed. A communication signal came from the alien flagship. The main screen showed Vexthor in what appeared to be his command chamber. The war commander looked even more imposing than he had at Kepler-7, his scales darker and his yellow eyes brighter. "Humans of Earth," Vexthor's voice boomed across the communication channel. "Your 30 days have expired. I see you have chosen to resist rather than surrender. This is unfortunate, but not unexpected. Primitive species often make poor choices," Admiral Morrison's voice responded from the Victory. "This is Admiral Jack Morrison of the United Earth Defense Fleet. You are in violation of Earth space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Vexthor made the rumbling sound that passed for draconian laughter. "Admiral Morrison, I see perhaps 50 of your little ships. We have 200 vessels, each one superior to your best warship. Are you certain you want to proceed with this foolishness?" "We're certain," Morrison replied coldly. "Very well," Vexthor said. "Let me demonstrate why your resistance is meaningless." The Bloodfang's main plasma cannon began to glow with blue energy. The weapon was as large as a human destroyer, and the power readings made the Endeavor's sensors scream warnings. A beam of superheated plasma lanced out across space and struck an asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. The asteroid, which had been roughly the size of a city block, simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was expanding gas and vapor. "That was our lowest power setting," Vexthor announced. "Your ships will not last even that long. This is your final chance to surrender." Greg felt his jaw clench. The demonstration was meant to terrify the human fleet, and he had to admit it was effective. But he also noticed something important. The plasma beam had traveled in a straight line at the speed of light. Predictable, easy to track. Unlike the kinetic weapons that were even now accelerating toward the Draconian fleet from hidden positions throughout the solar system. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," came the broadcast. "Execute Plan Alpha. Show them what human courage looks like." The human fleet surged forward. 50 ships against 200, charging toward impossible odds. To the Draconians, it must have looked like a final, desperate gambit. They had no way of knowing it was an elaborate distraction. Greg's tactical display showed the positions of both fleets. The humans were outnumbered 4-1, but they were faster and more maneuverable. Their ships darted between the massive alien vessels like fighters buzzing around bombers. "All weapons, fire at will," Greg ordered. The Endeavor's missile tubes opened and released their payload. Dozens of nuclear-tipped missiles streaked toward the nearest Draconian cruiser. At the same time, the ship's railguns began firing tungsten penetrators at maximum velocity. Across the human fleet, similar salvos erupted from every ship. The space between the two forces filled with missiles, energy beams, and high-velocity projectiles. It looked like a conventional space battle, exactly what the Draconians expected to see. The alien response was swift and devastating. Plasma cannons that could melt planets opened fire on the approaching human vessels. The space around Earth's fleet lit up with blue energy as beams of superheated matter lanced through the darkness. Greg watched in fascination as the human weapons reached their targets. The missiles struck first, their nuclear warheads detonating against the Draconian energy shields. The explosions were spectacular, turning space into a light show of atomic fire. But when the radiation cleared, the alien ships were undamaged. Their shields had absorbed the entire nuclear barrage without even flickering. Just as expected, Nathan muttered from his tactical station. Their shields can handle energy weapons easily. The railgun rounds arrived a few seconds later. These were simple tungsten rods accelerated to 30 kilometers per second, exactly the kind of primitive kinetic weapon that had made the Draconians laugh at Kepler-7. But something unexpected happened. The tungsten penetrators punched through, the energy shields as if they weren't there. Greg watched in amazement as the metal rods slammed into the hull of a Draconian destroyer. The impact sent shockwaves through the alien vessel, buckling its armor and causing explosions along its length. "Direct hit," reported the weapons officer. "The destroyer is venting atmosphere." Across the battle zone, similar scenes played out as human kinetic weapons found their marks. The Draconians had built their defenses around energy-based attacks. Their shields were useless against simple metal rods traveling at high velocity. "Impossible," Vex Thor's voice crackled over the communication channel. His image appeared on screens throughout the human fleet, showing a war commander who was no longer confident. "How are your primitive weapons penetrating our defenses?" Greg smiled grimly, because sometimes the old ways work best. The battle was far from over, but the first exchange had gone to humanity. 3 Draconian ships were crippled or destroyed, while the human fleet had suffered only minor damage from near misses. The aliens were learning that advanced technology wasn't always superior to simple physics. But Vex Thor was not a fool. He began barking orders to his subordinates in the Draconian language. The alien formation started to change, spreading out to make targeting more difficult. Their plasma cannons began firing in wider patterns, trying to catch the agile human ships with area effect weapons. "Admiral," Nathan said quietly, "the satellites should be reaching optimal velocity in 15 minutes. Greg nodded. The real test was still coming. The battle so far had been just the opening act. Soon the Draconians would learn what happened. When humanity truly committed to a fight. Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson's voice crackled over the fighter channel. "Endeavor, this is Fighter Squadron Alpha. We're beginning our attack run." Greg could see the fighters on his tactical display. 24 small, fast ships were darting toward the Draconian fleet. Each fighter carried a single kinetic kill vehicle, a tungsten rod with its own guidance system and thruster array. The alien point defense systems opened fire, filling space with streams of plasma. But the human fighters were too small and too fast to hit easily. They weaved between the energy beams like birds avoiding raindrops. Amy's fighter reached the Blood Fang and released its kinetic kill vehicle. The tungsten rod, accelerated by the fighter's momentum and its own thrusters, slammed into the flagship's hull at tremendous velocity. The impact sent ripples through the massive ship's energy shield before punching through the armor beneath. "Hit confirmed on the enemy flagship," Amy reported. "Minor damage to their primary hull." It wasn't enough to seriously hurt the Blood Fang, but it was proof that even the largest Draconian ships could be damaged by human weapons. More importantly, it was another distraction, keeping the aliens focused on the conventional battle while the real attack approached from the darkness of space. Greg checked the countdown timer. 10 minutes until the kinetic bombardment satellites reached optimal velocity. 10 minutes until the Draconians learned that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or firepower. It was the willingness to keep fighting when everyone else thought the fight was hopeless. Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Victory and watched the Draconian fleet move into Earth's orbital space. The massive alien ships had pushed past the outer defense perimeter, and now they hung in space like dark storm clouds above humanity's homeworld. Their energy shields flickered and pulsed as they prepared for planetary bombardment. The conventional battle had been going for 20 minutes. Several human ships were damaged or destroyed, but they had given better than they got. 8 Draconian vessels had been crippled by kinetic weapons, and the aliens were finally taking Earth's defense seriously. But Jack knew the real fight was just beginning. "Admiral," came the voice of Dr. Elena Vasquez from the command center on Earth's surface. "All kinetic bombardment satellites have reached optimal velocity. We're ready to execute Project Thunderbolt." Jack looked at the tactical display. Hidden throughout the solar system, 500 satellites had been accelerating tungsten rods for the past hour. Each satellite carried 20 rods, and each rod was now moving at 15% of the speed of light. 10,000 kinetic. Impactors, invisible to enemy sensors, were converging on the Draconian fleet from every direction. "Captain Williams, signal all ships to begin Phase 2, Jack ordered. Captain Sarah Williams, commanding the UES Phoenix, acknowledged the order from her position near Mars orbit. Her ship and 3 others had been held in reserve for this moment. They carried the most advanced targeting systems in the human fleet, and their job was to coordinate the kinetic bombardment. War Commander Vexthor appeared on the main communication screen. His yellow eyes blazed with anger, and his scales had shifted to a darker shade of red. The damage to his fleet had clearly shaken his confidence. "Admiral Morrison," Vexthor snarled, "your primitive weapons have caused some minor inconvenience, but this charade ends now. Observe the power of the Draconian Empire." The alien flagship's main weapon began to charge. The plasma cannon was larger than most human ships, and energy readings showed it building to levels that could crack continents. Other Draconian vessels were powering up similar weapons, preparing to turn Earth's surface into molten glass. "Elena, execute Thunderbolt," Jack said quietly into his communicator. "Executing now," came the reply. From the perspective of the Draconian, fleet space around them suddenly came alive with streaks of light. The tungsten rods, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, created brilliant trails as they compressed the thin matter between the stars. To human observers, it looked like the stars themselves were falling. The first impacts hit the Draconian formation with devastating effect. A destroyer on the fleet's outer edge took 3 direct hits in the span of a single second. The tungsten rods punched through its energy shield, through its armor, and out the other side. The ship broke apart in a series of explosions as its power core went critical. But that was just the beginning. The kinetic bombardment satellites had been positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. As the tungsten rods reached their targets, more were still accelerating through space. Wave after wave of kinetic impactors slammed into the Draconian fleet from directions they never expected. A massive cruiser tried to maneuver away from the bombardment, but there was nowhere to go. Dozens of tungsten rods struck it simultaneously, turning its hull into Swiss cheese. The ship's energy shield flickered and died as the generators were destroyed. Secondary explosions rippled along its length as ammunition storage areas were breached. Captain Sarah Williams watched from the Phoenix as her targeting computers coordinated the bombardment. "My God," she whispered. "It's working. It's actually working." The Draconian flagship was taking hits as well. The Bloodfang's massive bulk made it an easy target, and tungsten rods were striking it at regular intervals. Each impact sent shockwaves through the ship's structure. Vexthor's image on the communication screen shook as explosions rocked his command deck. "Impossible!" the War Commander roared. "Where are these attacks coming from? Our sensors detect no energy weapons." "That's because they're not energy weapons," Jack replied calmly. "They're rocks, Vexthor. Very fast rocks." Lieutenant Jack Foster led his fighter squadron through the chaos of the bombardment. His small ships carried their own kinetic kill vehicles, and now was the perfect time to use them. The Draconian point defense systems were overwhelmed by the tungsten rod bombardment, leaving gaps in their coverage. "Alpha Squadron, this is Foster," he transmitted to his pilots. "Target selection is free. Pick your shots and make them count." Foster's fighter dove toward a damaged Draconian cruiser. The alien ship was listing to one side, its energy shield flickering as power systems failed. He released his kinetic kill, vehicle at point-blank range, and watched it punch through the cruiser's hull like a bullet through paper. The bombardment continued for 5 minutes, though to the Draconians it must have felt like hours. When the last tungsten rod found its target, 63 alien ships had been destroyed or crippled. The mighty Draconian fleet was in chaos, their perfect formations scattered by the kinetic storm. But the aliens were not helpless. Those ships that survived began to return fire with desperate fury. Plasma cannons that could melt planets opened up on anything that moved. The space around Earth became a hell of superheated gas and radiation. The human fleet, smaller and more agile, danced between the plasma beams, but some shots found their marks. The UES Defiant took a direct hit from a dreadnought's main gun and simply vanished, turned to vapor in an instant. The destroyer Courage lost its forward section to a plasma blast and had to be abandoned. "Admiral," Captain Williams reported from the Phoenix, "we're detecting a 3 weeks after the Battle of Earth, Admiral Jack Morrison stood before the United Nations General Assembly in New York. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth, and for once, they were all listening to the same message. The victory over the Draconian Empire had united humanity in a way that nothing else ever had. Behind Jack, a massive display showed images from the battle. Draconian warships breaking apart under kinetic bombardment, human fighters weaving between plasma beams, the final destruction of War Commander Vex Thor's flagship. It was a story that would be told for generations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jack began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. 3 weeks ago, Earth faced extinction. An alien empire with technology centuries ahead of our own came to destroy us. They brought weapons that could melt planets and shields that had never been penetrated. They had every reason to believe victory was certain. He paused and looked out at the assembled delegates. They were wrong, not because we matched their technology, but because we remembered something they had forgotten. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. In the audience, Dr. Elena Vasquez nodded approvingly. She had spent the past weeks analyzing, captured draconian technology, and what she had found was both impressive and troubling. The aliens had indeed been centuries ahead of humanity in energy manipulation and shield technology. Their defeat had been a combination of human ingenuity and alien overconfidence. The Draconians built their entire military doctrine around energy weapons, Jack continued. For millions of years, they had faced enemies who fought with plasma, cannons and laser beams. They created perfect defenses against those weapons. But they forgot about the weapon that every species starts with: the rock, the spear, the simple projectile. General Kevin Brooks sat in the front row, listening to Jack's speech while reviewing reports from around the galaxy. The news from other star systems was remarkable. Species that had been under draconian rule for centuries were rising in rebellion. The hegemony of Keth had declared independence. The Crystalline Collective had seized 3 draconian supply depots. The fall of Vex Thor's fleet had sent shockwaves through the entire galaxy. "We didn't just think outside the box," Jack said, repeating the words that had become humanity's unofficial motto. "We threw the box at them at a significant fraction of light speed." The audience laughed, but it was nervous laughter. Everyone understood that Earth's victory had made them a target. Other alien empires were watching. Some might see humanity as valuable allies. Others would see them as dangerous enemies to be eliminated quickly. Captain Sarah Williams sat in the military section, now promoted to admiral after her role in the battle. She was already working on plans for the next generation of human warships. The victory had proven that kinetic weapons were effective, but it had also shown humanity's need for larger fleets and better defenses. "The question now," Jack continued, "is what we do with this victory. We've shown the galaxy that Earth will not be conquered easily, but we've also revealed capabilities that make us either valuable allies or dangerous enemies to every other species out there." In the back of the hall, Colonel Nathan Price was reviewing intelligence reports from across human space. Alien delegations were already requesting meetings. Some wanted to hire human military advisors. Others wanted to purchase kinetic weapons technology. A few were clearly gathering intelligence for potential attacks. "I propose that we use our victory not to become conquerors but to become protectors," Jack said. "Other species are reaching out to us, asking for help against their own oppressors. We have an opportunity to use our military capabilities to bring freedom to worlds that have known only tyranny." The proposal was controversial, and Jack could see it in the faces of the delegates. Some countries wanted to use Earth's new military advantage for economic gain. Others worried about getting involved in alien conflicts, but the majority seemed to understand that isolation was no longer an option. Dr. Vasquez stood up from her seat and walked to the podium when Jack finished his speech. She had been asked to brief the assembly on the technical aspects of Earth's victory. "The success of our kinetic weapons was due to a fundamental oversight in draconian defense doctrine," she explained. "Their shields were designed to stop energy-based attacks by redirecting them. But kinetic weapons don't give off energy signatures until they hit something. By the time their sensors detected our tungsten rods, impact was inevitable." She activated the display behind her, showing technical diagrams of the battle. We fired 10,000 tungsten rods at 15% of light speed. Each impact released the equivalent energy of a nuclear weapon, but without any of the warning signs their systems were designed to detect. Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson sat with the other military heroes of the battle. She had been promoted and given command of the new Kinetic Strike Squadron. Her job would be to train pilots from other species in the tactics that had proven so effective against the Draconians. The aliens made the mistake of assuming that advanced meant better, Dr. Vasquez continued. But physics doesn't care about your technology level. A tungsten rod moving at 15% of light speed will penetrate any known material. The Draconians learned this lesson the hard way. In orbit around Earth, construction crews were working around the clock to build new shipyards. The victory had proven that humanity needed a larger fleet, and they needed it quickly. Other empires were watching, and some of them were already making plans. Chief Engineer Bill Thompson was overseeing the construction of the new orbital facilities. The shipyards would be designed to build vessels that combined human kinetic weapons with alien technology captured from the Draconian fleet. The result would be warships more powerful than anything either species could build alone. Admiral Jack Morrison returned to the podium as Dr. Vasquez finished her presentation. The Draconians thought they were facing a primitive species with primitive weapons. They learned too late that primitive doesn't mean ineffective. Humanity has always been good at taking simple concepts and perfecting them. He looked out at the assembled delegates, knowing that his next words would shape Earth's future. We have a choice to make. We can use our victory to become the very thing we fought against, expanding our empire through conquest and oppression. Or we can use our strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The vote was closer than Jack had hoped, but the proposal passed. Earth would share its kinetic weapons technology with species fighting for freedom, but only under strict conditions. Human military advisors would oversee the construction and deployment of the weapons to ensure they weren't used for conquest. As the session ended, Jack was approached by representatives from a dozen alien species. The Centauri Republic wanted help against the hegemony. The Free Traders Coalition needed protection from pirates. The Crystal Cities were facing invasion from the Machine Empire. Admiral Morrison, said Ambassador Kaylor of the Centauri Republic, my people have been fighting the hegemony for 50 years. Their energy shields make them nearly invincible, but your kinetic weapons could change everything. Jack nodded carefully. We'll consider your request, Ambassador. But understand that human military aid comes with conditions. We won't help you conquer your neighbors. We'll only help you defend your freedom. The ambassador's expression showed relief. That is all we ask. The hegemony has enslaved 12 species. With your help, we could free them all. Similar conversations took place throughout the hall as alien representatives pitched their causes to human officials. Earth had become the galaxy's newest superpower overnight, and everyone wanted to be their friend. But Jack knew it wouldn't last. Somewhere out there, other empires were studying the battle recordings and working on countermeasures. The Draconian defeat had bought Earth time and allies, but it had also painted a target on humanity's back. Later that evening, Jack met with his senior staff in a secure conference room beneath the United Nations building. The group included Admiral Williams, General Brooks, Dr. Vasquez, and Colonel Price. They were planning humanity's next moves. Intelligence reports indicate at least 3 major empires are developing countermeasures to kinetic weapons, General Brooks said. The Void Lords are working on gravitational shields. The Star Empire is building point defense systems specifically designed to stop high-velocity projectiles. Then we'll have to stay ahead of them, Admiral Williams replied. Dr. Vasquez, what do you recommend? The physicist had been studying captured draconian technology for weeks. We combine human kinetic weapons with alien energy systems. Imagine tungsten rods accelerated by graviton manipulators instead of electromagnetic launchers. We could achieve velocities approaching 50% of light speed. Colonel Price leaned forward. What about guided munitions? Smart tungsten rods that can adjust their trajectory during flight. Already working on it, Dr. Vasquez said. We salvaged enough draconian computer cores to reverse engineer their guidance systems. Combined with human kinetic technology, the results should be devastating. Jack listened to the discussion and felt both pride and worry. Humanity had won its first interstellar war, but they were already planning for the next one. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and Earth's